Now before you start running circles around me, yes, I know, microtransactions. This is nothing new from Capcom, and it's entirely unnecessary, greedy, and detrimental. Not to mention, useless. I played the game for 2 weeks pre-launch before the store even existed, and not once did I ever think anything was missing. That aside, let me talk about why Dragon's Dogma 2 is a phenomenal game. After a dramatic, gorgeous, and incredible opening section that leads you right into the heart of the action, you'll make your character with the extensive character creation tools and be ready to go adventuring. When you're getting started, people will begin to introduce you to the mechanics of the game, from exploration to combat, and even the pawns, the player-made companions you'll hire to accompany you across your journey. You'll create your main pawn and then be ready to start questing and obtaining some gear. But you should also hire a couple more pawns first to have a full party. And also just so you can see the cool transition between the game and the Rift. Like, come on, that never gets old, even 70 hours later. Then, you're let loose into this colossal world. And I mean colossal. This game is so much bigger than you first expect, and then even more so. There's so much I want to show and want to talk about, but to discover it all is an experience everyone should have, so let's stick to the basics. So you start out in the Kingdom of Vermund, and will eventually make your way into the Beastren land of Batal as well, home to one of the new races in Dragon's Dogma 2, the feline-like people of the desert. Both regions are vastly different, and offer up so many locations, secrets, and quests to take part in. And seriously, I'm still finding stuff, and more just pops up all the time, whether it's on a visit back to the capital, or the same road I feel I've travelled a few times now, a new quest will show up, or I'll find a new cave to dive into. At first, you might feel like the world is pretty much where the paths lead, and will be sparse and inaccessible in between. But when you actually start to trek off the beaten path, you'll be surprised to find just how much is waiting out there in the wilds. Ruins, locations, and ever dangerous monsters. What helps with the scale and the surprise and discovery is the traversal. We're very much used to open world games now offering the ability to freely climb most things and use gliders to let us soar across huge distances. In Dragon's Dogma 2, the only climbing will be as you clamber up rocks in an attempt to reach something, but often you'll have to rely on your legs to find you a new way around. Or maybe some help from your pawns. In this sense, it very much feels like an open world game of Dark Souls design. And yes, I know Elden Ring exists, but I mean classic Dark Souls. A locked door that can only be opened from the other side, meaning you can't climb over a wall or scale a mountain, but will instead mean you have to find hidden paths, use creative means to unlock new routes, or find caves that might lead to where you need to go, and in the process, discover something else entirely. The world has grown on me as much as I feel it's grown alongside me, ever expanding into something that always has something to offer, and one that I've had an absolute joy in uncovering. But I briefly mentioned monsters back there, so let's get into that. Oh boy, are there monsters. This world is filled with threats that will show up at every turn. Yes, there are wolves that will attempt to eat you, and goblins that will attempt to dive into you. But these are miniature in comparison. When you're exploring on foot or travelling by ox cart, you'll often run into some trouble, that trouble being a very angry ogre or a stampeding cyclops. Or, you know, maybe a griffin for good measure. Or all of the above. And when you're exploring the nooks and crannies of the world, you might come across chimeras, minotaurs, and even drakes as they absolutely obliterate you. And these fights are never assured, and always unpredictable. They can take place anywhere, and the environment will take no favourites. Or you might hop atop the griffin using the classic ability to climb on big monsters, only for it to take to the skies, show you the sights, and kindly drop you off at its nest. And there are even more special monsters that you can find tucked away in the deepest recesses and corners of the map, which will offer up a whole new kind of fight, and gain you some more unique materials. Like Skyrim, where you've fought 20 dragons and seeing another one doesn't quite have the same impact as the first, you'll eventually be used to seeing a local griffin or another cyclops come storming out of some toppling trees, but it remains just as exciting. These monsters are big and can pose threats, or are just fun to see as you travel. A griffin swooping into a field of oxen, or a minotaur obliterating your cart as you travel from town to town, are both things that you'll encounter time and time again, but with such a fun, varied, and ever-changing combat dynamic, this makes each scenario its own. The combat gameplay in Dragon's Dogma 2 will greatly depend on what vocation you choose, and what vocations your party of pawns will be. I could take a good while to explain each one, and all would be completely different in how you approach fights and the experience that you have in doing so. You can first pick from Fighter, Archer, Thief, and Mage, but will unlock more as you play the game, from Advanced Sorcerers and Warriors, to the dual blade wielding Mystic Spearhands and magic powerhouse that is the Magic Archer. You might use a classic sword and shield, fight at a range with a bow while hopping across terrain, or cast powerful sorceries from above as you levitate in the air, and every vocation honestly feels like something of a different game. Mix this in with the dynamic of your party, where mages will support and enchant you, rangers will cover you, and thieves will climb atop towering beasts with their daggers before backflipping out of the action, and you'll have yourself a great time in every fight. Well, as long as you can hold your own. You can also switch vocations at any time when visiting the guild halls in settlements, so you're not tied into one throughout the whole game, but sticking to them means ranking up, and then unlocking new, more powerful skills and abilities to test out on some unsuspecting monsters. I've mostly stuck as a sword and shield fighter, for example, but changing to a thief or a mystic spearhand when I want to be a little bit more nimble and quicker in my attacks could not be easier, and means I can switch things up at any time. But even when sticking to mostly one vocation, I still have just as much fun with each battle, and I have no fear of the game feeling repetitive because of the variation in both encounters and in the choice of vocation when the mood strikes. Sometimes certain stories and quests might require you to be another vocation to take part, and you can do so, meaning you get to try them out when you might not have done so in the first place, often giving you a new sense of how you can go about your adventure. And speaking of the adventure, Dragon's Dogma 2 has a thoroughly enjoyable story. Of course, fans of the first game will know the classic tale. The dragon steals your heart, and now you are marked as arisen, destined to destroy the dragon. Or at least try. That's the bare bones basics, but the plot of politics and world-altering threats make sure to take this all a step further. And there are some incredible set pieces, dramatic moments, and revelations to keep you in awe after so many hours already spent in this world. It's also a huge story, but one that you can play at a pace that best suits you. Sure, you could solely focus on the main quests and see the end in 20-something hours, or you could get wrapped up in every little story, quest, and location to extend that upwards of 100 hours, with so many things to uncover as you go. There are also multiple endings to seek out, and New Game Plus to let you go at it in a new light. If you know the first game, you know that it had a heavy focus on endgame content, and Dragon's Dogma 2 has enough on offer to keep you intrigued and coming back. And with any luck, DLC akin to the Dark Arisen expansion for the first game will one day come to expand this world even more. I might not have known it, but what I really needed was a huge open world fantasy game to give me freedom, scale, and so many opportunities for exploration, while also letting me hire Barry Chuckle and a lion man called Balrog into my party of adventurers. And Dragon's Dogma 2 has, very specifically, delivered on all fronts. It's a game that throws you into its world and then continues to throw more into it for you to find, making adventure the forefront of your experience, no matter where you go, what you decide to do, or the choices you make within the many quests you'll undertake. You'll see time pass as you adventure, and the world will change with it, from meat rotting in your pack to civilians just living out their lives, and oftentimes things won't wait for you, with consequences passing you by if you fail to act. Your first, second, and third playthrough of Dragon's Dogma 2 will be inherently different, from the vocation you choose to play, the companions you bring along, the choices you make, and the things you'll continue to discover that you didn't previously come across. It's a huge RPG in every sense of the word, and I can see it continue to remain standing atop 2024 when the year comes to a close and we all look back on the biggest and most impressive games. The likes of Baldur's Gate 3 took the world by storm in the latter half of 2023, and now Dragon's Dogma 2 should, in every right, do the same for 2024. Whatever the rest of the year may bring, it's one to hold highly, and while the pointless, afterthought microtransactions that are present in that of many games, Capcom's Resident Evil and Devil May Cry included, they're not only needless, but detrimental, as the game is complete without them. And though there are valid concerns about the frame rate and performance of the game, it's by no means unenjoyable as it is, and the performance updates are coming down the line, which, when all is said and done, can be appreciated that the action will be taken. Dragon's Dogma 2 is phenomenal, and it easily sits as one of my favourite games in recent years, and something that I'm so glad we get to play. I expected to like it, but I never expected to love it as much as I do. The first game was great, though a little less in the spotlight, but the sequel deserves its time to shine more than ever.